Welcome to Lesson 4 in Module 3, Leveraging the Facebook Toolset. Today we're going to be talking all about placement, optimization, budgeting, and bidding. This is going to be one of our more technical lessons. We're not going to be doing a lot of on-screen tutorial. I like to walk you through this in a very deliberate fashion, and of course you can re-reference Ads Manager while we're talking about this to familiarize yourself with what we're talking about. So what we're going through right now are the next steps of creating a Facebook ad. If you're using Ads Manager or even in Power Editor, the very first things you'll have to choose are your campaign objective and defining your audience. Down below that, still inside the ad set level, here are the other options we have. Of course, we have placement. What sort of devices do we want to send our ads to? Secondly, we'll talk about budgeting and scheduling. In addition to explaining how this works, I'm also going to give you some rules of thumb on how to do this inside of your own campaigns. Next, we'll be talking about optimization. Even though we choose a campaign objective, we will have further options on how we want to optimize these specific ads. Next, we'll be talking about bidding. You have both the option to bid automatically or manually, so we'll cover the pros and cons of those, and I'll give you some rules of thumb to follow. Now, I've got a very important disclaimer that I want everybody to pay attention to. All of these options are selected at the ad set level. We did a basic overview of the different options you have inside of the campaign, the ad set, and the ad level. All of these changes happen at the ad set level. It's very important to isolate all of the factors that can contribute to the effectiveness of our ads. Because of this, I always recommend not mixing and matching different placement, budget, and scheduling options within a campaign. What this means is if you want to run both desktop and mobile ads, I don't recommend that you select both of those placement options inside of the same ad set. Instead, you'll want to create a separate ad set with its own specific placement options. That way you can clearly define and see whether the desktop or the mobile ads are converting better. When you leave this up to Facebook, they will simply push it out for as low a cost as possible, and you may not actually end up appearing in the different placements that you've selected. Now, it's important to know this because by default, Facebook will give all placements as a default option when you create your ads. If you plan to run on both mobile and on desktop, always separate them at the ad set level. We will talk more about this in our campaign structure lesson, but a good simple rule of thumb is to separate, and always test. Let's just say, for instance, you wanted to spend $50 per day and you wanted it to appear on both desktop and on mobile devices. I would recommend setting up one ad set specifically for desktop with a $25 budget, a second ad set with the $25 budget going only to mobile. This way you will spend exactly the amount of money you want on every placement type, and you'll maintain much more control over your campaign. So we're going to jump into these one at a time. First of all, we need to talk about placement. Placement allows you to select where your ads appear. The various options include desktop, desktop right-hand column, mobile, and audience network. By default, Facebook will put your ads on all placements, but be sure to select specifically where you want your ads to appear. Now within mobile, you do have different options. Mobile does not have a right-hand column, so this means your ads will always be displayed directly in the newsfeed. Now, there's really only two ways that a user can tell whether your ad is an ad or an actual post. The first is whether they follow your page or not. If they don't follow your page and your ad's appearing, they know it's an ad. The other thing is that below your actual page name, it'll say sponsored if it's an advertisement. But for all intents and purposes, this looks just like any other organic post that's just showing up in someone's newsfeed. The other mobile option you have is the audience network. If you play any games on your phone or if you use any other mobile apps, you probably know what these things look like. It could be a little advertisement that shows up at the bottom, or it could be a full screen takeover that happens after you play a turn in a game or something like that. I don't recommend using Audience Network unless you're trying to advertise an app or if you strictly want the branding benefits of having your logo displayed on somebody's screen inside of an application. I would not suggest the Audience Network or what I call the app ads unless you strictly want the branding aspect of it. You're not going to get conversions 9 times out of 10 with the Audience Network. And you also have options within desktop placement. First of all, you've got the newsfeed. You're going to appear directly in the newsfeed along with all that person's other organic posts. And again, the only two ways that someone can differentiate your ad from an actual organic post is A, whether they follow your page, or B, by looking underneath the page name and seeing if it's sponsored. Otherwise, your ad's going to appear exactly like an organic post. It is important to note that your ads, if you build them through Ads Manager or in Power Editor and you don't select an existing post, these are what they call dark posts, which means they are not going to actually appear in the timeline of your page. People who follow your page won't see this ad unless you select that you want to send them to your page followers. The other desktop option is the right-hand column. Now, I've talked to people before who weren't super familiar with Facebook ads, and they say, I never click on Facebook ads. And what they're referring to is the right-hand column posts. The majority of the ads that we're talking about actually appear in the newsfeed. The ones that appear in the right-hand column are most easily recognized as plain advertisements. Almost everybody understands this, but not everybody understands that some of the posts that appear in their newsfeed are also advertisements. Now, you'll have to test this in your specific audience with your specific business and see how it works for you. I don't often use the right-hand column placement unless I simply want the branding aspects of that. Now, it is inexpensive to go into the right-hand column, so if you're cost conscious, that may be an option for you. But if you do choose to use the right-hand placement, these ads are most effective as retargeting ads. Somebody who's already got some sort of familiarity with your page or has already clicked on one of your previous advertisements, if you want that persistently sticking in the right-hand column, that can be good. But again, they're not going to work quite as well as the ones that appear directly in the newsfeed. The two placement options you should primarily focus on are the ones that appear directly in the newsfeed, whether that's on mobile or on desktop. I will reiterate one more time how important it is to separate your ads by placement type. If you choose to do right-hand column, make sure you separate those from your other desktop ads. This way you can attribute the clicks and conversions specifically to where the placement was. If you choose desktop and you do both right hand and in the center column, all of your conversions could be coming from one of those different placement options, but you won't be able to attribute it back to one specific ad. So always separate these by placement type. The second thing we'll be talking about is budgeting and scheduling. Now, you do have various budgeting options. First of all, you'll have daily budget. This is by default selected when you create your ad. And it's pretty straightforward. This is the amount that you intend to spend per day. Now, unless you have a really terrible ad or you have a really highly competitive niche, you will spend this daily budget every single day. The second option you have is a lifetime budget. Essentially what you're saying is I'm willing to spend $500, and once that amount is exhausted, then the ad will just shut itself off. As far as budgeting goes, my recommendation would be to use the daily budget. This allows you to have the maximum amount of control over how much you spend. If you choose a lifetime budget of $500, Facebook is going to be able to pick and choose how often they display your ad over that ad's life cycle and not over a specific day. Now, you also have different scheduling options that are available to you. By default, these ads will run continuously. So if you were to turn an ad on, let it run, and didn't do anything to it, it would continue spending money every single day. You can also define a specific start and end date for your campaign. You could simply say, start these ads on Friday, run them for a week and a half, and turn them off next Thursday. Scheduling your ads doesn't really have an effect on how it's going to perform. So if you're somebody who likes to plan ahead, set yourself up ahead of time, then you can just find this start and end date and let the ads run. They'll automatically shut themselves off. So I do suggest using a daily budget, but when it comes time for scheduling in terms of daytime scheduling, that's really up to your discretion. Now, one more tip on budgeting and schedule. In the testing phase, budget at least 3 times what a conversion is worth to you. So for example, let's say that your goal is to get $5 conversions. If that's your goal, your daily budget needs to be at least $15 per day. This allows you to get 3 conversions per day within your daily budget to start testing the effectiveness of your campaign. One of the most frequently asked questions I get is how much should I budget on a daily budget when I'm testing my ads? We will cover this in more detail during the testing lesson that happens later in this module, but start with at least 3 times what your target cost per lead is, or cost per transaction is. If a lead is worth $10 to you, you need to budget at least $30 per day. So rule of thumb is at least 3 times whatever your cost per action is. The next thing we're going to talk about is optimization. Now, by default, your ads will be optimized for whatever campaign objective you've selected. For instance, if you chose a clicks campaign, you would automatically be optimized for clicks, meaning Facebook will deliver your ads to people that they feel are most likely to click. However, Facebook will give you additional optimization options to choose from. Always leave the optimization as is until you have tested with the default optimization, and only switch a conversion campaign to any other optimization type after you have had good response with the default conversion settings. The only time I would stray from this is if you've already had success and you want to roll the dice on trying to reach more non-optimized people with this same ad. So an example of this would be if you had somewhat of a smaller audience, let's say you had 50,000 people, and you had gotten really good conversions with the default optimization settings. But when you start looking through and analyzing how your ad is performing, you may recognize that your ads aren't going to as large a group of that audience as you would prefer it be delivered to. The way you can tell this is that inside of Ads Manager or inside of Power Editor when you're looking at a report, you can tell the reach of your ads and it'll tell you the unique number of people that have seen your ads. You can also see a score that Facebook gives you that's called frequency. Frequency tells you the average number of times that somebody inside your audience has seen your ads. So if your frequency started creeping up and you look at your reach and you realize that you hadn't reached nearly the amount of people inside your audience, what you can determine is that your ads are being delivered to the same people multiple times. Well, if you've had a good response with the audience that you are reaching, but you want to reach more people inside of there, you could change that campaign that's currently optimized for conversions over to optimize for clicks or to impressions. Now, this can be a very effective way of reaching outside of the conversion audience that Facebook's automatically picking for you. However, you're also telling Facebook to not optimize for people who are likely to convert. So when you make this change, you're ultimately telling Facebook, don't discriminate on people that are more likely to convert. I want you to send it to more people inside of this audience, regardless of what their conversion habits look like in the past. Now, if your ad is really relevant to that market, you may be able to get some of those people who aren't likely converters to end up converting in your ads, but you're also running the risk of sending your ads to people who aren't likely to take any sort of action, and you could see a decline in response rates. So by default, I would always optimize your campaigns for whatever your campaign objective is, and only mess with these optimization settings if you've already seen success with your ads. So I mentioned that there are other optimization options. What do those look like? Well, you could optimize for impressions. This basically tells Facebook to deliver your ads to people as many times as possible. This can be a good thing if you're trying to stay front of mind with your prospects, but you also could see some negative feedback, people clicking off your ads. Whenever an ad appears in either mobile or a desktop newsfeed, there's a little arrow icon in the top right-hand corner of that post. Somebody can click on this ad and say, stop showing me this post, and they can tell you specifically why. If that starts to happen, you'll have negative feedback, and that's going to impact the quality score of your advertisements. So make sure to pay careful attention to the quality score that Facebook is giving your ad if you choose to go with another optimization type like impressions. Another option is optimize for clicks. Now, if you do choose to mess with these optimization options, I would say this would be the next best one to go to after you've run a conversion campaign. This will optimize your ads for people who are likely to click. So these aren't as responsive as the people who are likely to convert, but at the same time, they are taking some sort of action. Another option you'll have is daily unique reach. Now this is similar to impressions, but now you're trying to reach as many people as possible, but only up to once per day. Impressions will send it to the same people very, very frequently, whereas unique daily reach will try to get it to a broader group of your audience, but not more than once per day. Now changing these optimization options can help your ad reach a wider group of people, but you need to understand that it could impact the cost per conversion that you see inside of your ads. The third thing we're going to be talking about is bidding. Now, there are two main options, automatic or manual. Automatic bidding allows Facebook to automatically optimize your ads to be displayed to your selected audience at the best possible price. I always suggest that you start with automatic bidding. Now, manual bidding allows you to define what an action is worth to you. There are really two reasons that you would want to use manual bidding. First of all, you might be trying to get impressions, clicks, or conversions, whatever your objective is, for less than the suggested bid amount. What this means is that you are telling Facebook to automatically bid less than what the suggested bid is, and you're only paying for underpriced traffic. The other instance in which you would want to play with manual bidding is if you're attempting to outbid your competitors. If you're in a competitive market space and there's a lot of people trying to hit the same audience with ads, you can basically tell Facebook, I'm willing to spend more than the suggested bid amount in an attempt to outbid your competitors. Now again, I always suggest starting with automatic bidding. Facebook will look at your audience, determine how many people are bidding for those same impressions, and they're going to try to make everybody happy by giving everyone the most action on their ads at the lowest possible price. Now I'm going to repeat something I said on the previous slide. I would only suggest going to manual bidding after you've already seen success with your ads to this same audience. If you've seen success, the ad works, the offer that you're making is working, and you simply are trying to get really competitive on how your ads are displayed, then you can test manual bidding. Until that point, leave it alone, stick with automatic bidding. Now, the amount you bid is not necessarily what you will pay. If you choose a bid amount that is more than what's required to get you to your objective, you will only pay slightly more than what the competition is willing to pay. Let's say, for instance, that you are doing manual bidding. Facebook will show you the suggested bid amount is maybe $20 per 1,000 impressions. If you bid $3,000, you wouldn't literally pay $3,000 for that objective. Facebook will say, okay, what are the other competitors willing to pay? We're going to put you slightly over them, but you're not going to pay verbatim the amount that you bid. You can also select average bid or maximum bid based on what your goal is. If your goal is trying to hedge your costs and make sure you're not spending too much to reach your audience, you can choose maximum bid and say, I don't want to pay any more than this amount. If you choose average bid, you may pay slightly above or slightly below that, but at the end of the day, your average bid will be the amount that you selected. But again, depending on what your goal is, you can choose one of these two different options. Finally, here's some tips. If you're aggressively trying to outbid the competitors, I recommend that you bid 3 to 5 times the suggested bid amount. Typically, the way Facebook will show this is based off the cost per 1,000 impressions. Again, that's going to vary depending on what your audience is, but it could be anywhere from $10 up to $30. If Facebook says the suggested bid amount is $25 and you're trying to be very aggressive and outbid your competitors, I would put your amount of bid in there at 3 to 5 times that. So $75 to $100 per 1,000 impressions. Now, one of two things is going to happen when you do this. First of all, your ads could explode and you could see the cheapest clicks and conversions you've ever seen before. Because you're monopolizing people's news feed, you're getting delivered way more than your competitors. You could see your cost per click and cost per conversion go down dramatically. On the other hand, you could see your cost per conversion spike because now you're oversaturating your market and you're getting less conversions per impression. Be very, very careful when you experiment with manual bidding and only do it once you have a track record with both that audience and the offer you're giving them. So we've covered the 4 basic things that are happening inside this lesson: placement, optimization, budgeting, and bidding. But there are some other options at the ad set level I want to cover briefly. First of all is the conversion window. You'll be able to select the amount of time that Facebook uses to attribute a conversion to your ad. By default, this conversion window is 1 day, which means that if somebody converts within 24 hours of clicking on your website, they will attribute that to that ad. Now you can select 7 days. If you're like me, you might have 20 or 30 different windows in your Google Chrome browser at any given time. And sometimes you'll see an advertisement and you'll want to click on it but maybe read it later. So you might right click on that thing and open it up in another tab and not come back to it for a couple of days. If this happens, Facebook will attribute that click to the ad but wait for at least 7 days before it decides whether to count it as a conversion. If that person does convert within the next 7 days, it will retroactively attribute that conversion to the ad. There's really not a right or wrong on the amount of time that you attribute that conversion to. This is strictly your personal preference. Another thing to be aware of is how Facebook billing works. This doesn't strictly fit inside of the ad set level, but because we're talking about budgeting and billing, it might be a good time to cover this. Facebook allows you to select what they call a billing threshold. The way it works is that your ads will be delivered and run, and then you'll be charged retroactively once you hit a billing threshold. Now currently the maximum billing threshold that you can select is $750, but even when you select this highest option, you will be billed in smaller increments to start. You'll see a transaction come across for $25 and then $50 and then $250 and then $500 and then finally $750. Basically, Facebook wants to see that you're actually paying for your ads. And so they're going to bill you at smaller increments and build you up to that billing threshold. Once you hit your $750 billing threshold, you will continue to be charged every time your ad spends $750 retroactively after they have been displayed. There will also be a closeout transaction at the end of every month. So if you just hit your $750 billing threshold 2 days before the end of the month and you're spending another $100 a day for 2 more days, you'll see another transaction at the end of the month for $200. Now typically, once you pay your bills and once you hit that $750 billing threshold, if that's what you've selected, you will continue to be billed every time your ad spends $750 or the end of the month occurs, and they'll start the billing cycle over. This is especially important for those of you who are running ad agencies. You'll need to explain to your clients how their charges will be accrued. Another thing to talk about is delivery. Facebook will allow you to choose if you want your ads to be displayed normally or if you want to accelerate your delivery. Accelerated delivery may be useful if you want to push out a timely message to people in an audience as rapidly as possible, but it's only available when you choose manual bidding. So let's just say you have a flash sale that's good only for 24 hours. That may be an example where you want to accelerate your delivery and try to push that message out to people as quickly as possible. Just know that when you select this option, you do have to go to manual bidding. Now, if you're going to go to manual bidding, strictly for the purposes of using accelerated delivery, I would just choose the default suggested bid and plug that in to basically replicate what the automatic bidding would have been like. So I want to conclude this lesson with some basic rules of thumb. First of all, always separate your ads based on placement and test them separately. This allows you to put a specific amount of money to every single placement type and attribute the conversions and sales from those ads specifically to that placement type. Always separate. Second, I would always suggest that you start with a daily budget. We'll talk more about this inside of the campaign testing and structure lesson, but as a rule of thumb, I would steer you away from lifetime budgets. Always start with default optimization settings. Once you've established a really good conversion rate that you're happy with, you can start playing around with the other optimization options, but start with the default options. Also start with automatic bidding. We talked a little bit about the pros and cons of this earlier, but I'll restate them to you. Automatic bidding basically takes your ability to screw things up out of the picture to start with. If you're seeing really good conversion numbers that you're happy with, whether it's an impression campaign, a clicks campaign, a conversion campaign, Only after you've established some sort of campaign that's acceptable to you should you start working with manual bidding. At that time, you need to pick your strategy, whether you want to try to underpay for traffic or outbid your competitors for that traffic. If you want to underpay for traffic, look at the suggested bid amount and go under it. If you want to be aggressive, look at the suggested bid amount and bid 3 to 5 times that amount, keeping in mind that you will not be charged the amount that you bid. Facebook will look at the other people advertising to your same audience, and you will only slightly overpay based on what your competitors are paying. But what it means is that when the auction happens and everybody's bidding for that impression, you're going to automatically be above what your competitors bid, and your ads will be displayed more frequently. Be very careful with manual bidding, especially the first time that you go to manual bidding. Keep a very close eye on your ads for the first 24 to 48 hours. Finally, start with standard delivery. There aren't a lot of times where you'll even want to use accelerated delivery, but if you do, always start with the standard delivery. Finally, don't draw conclusions about your ad performance for at least 24 to 36 hours from the time that they go live. It'll take Facebook a while to understand who your audience is, see what kinds of people are reacting to it, start to send it out to those people to where you can start seeing a true cost per conversion. I used to say 24 hours was a good rule of thumb to use. Now I like to stretch that to about 36 to 48 hours. Basically, be patient. Resist the urge to want to change things as soon as you don't start seeing conversions come in immediately. Let the ads run for a full 24 hours before you draw any conclusions. If you've made it this far, I want to commend you for enduring some of the most egg-headed stuff we're ever going to talk about. Some of what we just covered can be boring and uninteresting, but I want to commend you for going through this lesson so that you understand all of the options available to you at the ad set level. I have put links to a couple resources below this video, so be sure to check those out. And in our next lesson, we're going to be talking about everything that we can do at the ad level. So be sure to come back, and I guarantee you learn some really exciting things that will help your ads perform really well from our next lesson.